We should note that Jordan's King Abdullah has rejected Trump's ideas for Gaza, which would see his country take in more Palestinians. Jordanian support for Palestinians runs deep. Many Jordanians have Palestinian heritage, and more than 2 million Palestinian refugees live there. But there are concerns that millions more refugees could disrupt decades of stability in the country. DW's Emily Gordine reports now from Jordan's capital, Amman.
It's Ramadan, and if you want to talk politics, you need to go out after dark. After iftar, the meal to break the daytime fast, people across the capital Amman come together to talk and smoke. These are testing times for Jordanians. The burning topic is the US president's plans for forcibly moving hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from Gaza here.
I think this plan is not going to work. The Palestinians have the right to form their own state on their own land and soil.
It's more than a matter of principle. There are practical concerns too.
It's like the rest of the world. Everywhere it's very going crazy, the economy. And we are affected like everybody else, especially we are a poor country. We're not rich with oil and gas and any minerals.
Over 20% of the population is unemployed, and the share is even higher among young Jordanians. The country is also one of the most water-scarce ones in the world. Even here in the capital, people usually only get one water delivery a week. The country relies on input from outside. Financial support from the US, for example, accounts for 6% of the budget, and that's not all.
There's a strong backing up from the US to Jordan, politically, militarily, and security, and this is very important beside the economic side. I think the Jordanian dinar is backed up by the US dollar, and this is very important to keep it in consideration always. It's the source of stability as well of the Jordanian currency, the Jordanian banking system.
This creates a high-stakes dilemma for Jordanian leaders.
It's a really delicate balancing act for King Abdullah and his government between what their international allies, the US and Israel, want and what the people of Jordan expect them to do.
Jordan has long welcomed refugees from across the region, especially Palestinians. They came during the 1948 war when they were forced to leave their homes during the creation of the State of Israel, and again in the war of 1967. Over the years, most Palestinians have successfully integrated into Jordanian society. But some analysts are concerned that another influx of refugees could not only exacerbate existing problems, but also create new ones.
At least those people, they have needs. They need housings, they need jobs, they need political rights, and they need to be part of, the system. This will exert so much pressure on the regime, on the system, because the Jordanian people, they don't want to become a minority in their own country.
Back at the cafe, the hope is that Arab leaders will unite and find a way for Palestinians to stay in the Palestinian territories.
In Jordan, everybody, His Majesty the King, or the government, or the people, we do believe that the solution for this problem is a two-state solution.
Support for Palestinians is unwavering, but the pressure of more refugees could well threaten the stability of Jordan.
So let's take a closer look at this emergency summit in Cairo with Burcu Ozcelik, a senior research fellow for Middle East security at the Royal United Services Institute in London. Thank you so much for joining us today. The Arab states are reportedly working on a plan to rebuild Gaza without displacing its people. What do you think this plan will look like?
Well, there are some details that have emerged already about the draft plan that has been proposed by Egypt and is expected to receive broad-based buy-in from other Arab states through the course of today in the emergency summit being held in Cairo. I think the main strength of the plan that has been disclosed thus far is what you just explained, that it's reconstruction without displacement. And whilst US President Donald Trump may have thrown down the gauntlet in some ways in calling upon Arab states to come up with a counter proposal, this is very much that. And it's not to say that the Arab states have had to scramble necessarily to put this together. The proposal that is emerging currently is the culmination of a consensus across the Arab world that has been there for a long time and is long-standing. The proposal, so far as we understand it, foresees the Gazans remaining in the Gaza Strip throughout the course of a multi-phased reconstruction and recovery plan between 3 to 5 years. And there's also a 10-year horizon to this as well. The Gazans will be homed in temporary housing through various zones across the Strip. There will be a technocratic committee. And this is where I think the issue is and where there could be challenges. What the proposal does not do is spell out a future governance structure for Gaza. And the elephant in the room here, of course, is what will happen to Hamas, both its military and political arms. And this is the overarching question that hangs over any proposal over the future governance framework and mechanisms over Gaza.
So if I may just jump in and ask, where do you see Arab states not aligned on those specific issues?
Well, it's commonly known that there is a diversity of opinion on what the future of Hamas should be. There are some states, of course, led by the United States and Israel, who are adamant that Hamas must not have a role in the future governance structure of Gaza. There are others who believe that there could be moderates within Hamas that could be negotiated with, that could be partners for peace going forward. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has voiced behind the scenes and publicly as well, to an extent, that this could hold some possibility. The question is what to do with Hamas. Doing away with it, completely eradicating this organization, seems to be very difficult. And there are political divisions across the Arab world as to what this might look like. The concern now, however, the reality is that the Arab summit today comes at a time when the ceasefire agreement in place is a greater risk than it has been. And we could be on at the beginning of potentially a new military operation inside Gaza, a new cycle of violence. And that is very, very concerning.
I did want to ask you about that. We've seen, as you say, Israel and Hamas at an impasse over the future of this fragile ceasefire. Israel has halted all entry of goods and supplies into Gaza, and it's said that Hamas will face other consequences if it does not accept a new ceasefire proposal. It sounds like you are not particularly hopeful for another truce, or do you think we could see something here?
I think Israel is certainly ratcheting up the pressure and trying to exert more leverage over Hamas. This comes on the heels of President Trump's statements earlier in February when there was a delay in the release of Israeli hostages from the Hamas side. And President Trump commented that all hell will break loose if all Israeli hostages are not returned. And then he suggested that it was up to Prime Minister Netanyahu to decide how that would play out. I think we might be there now. And Israel has suspended the entry of humanitarian aid and goods into Gaza. The argument being that Hamas is stockpiling the aid, is not distributing fairly and equally, and that the flow is benefiting Hamas itself. Additionally, we've had the problematic displays of the release ceremonies that Hamas has choreographed inside Gaza, which did not play out well, both inside Israel and I think a global audience as well found that quite disturbing. And so the ground could be now there for a potential future IDF operation into Gaza. There are some of the hardliners on the Hamas side as well who believe that they are ready for another fight if necessary. And I think we're at a very, very fragile crossroads now in terms of the continuation of the ceasefire. Of course, negotiations should have already been underway to move on to phase 2 of the agreement, which would require Israel to pull out in entirety from the Gaza Strip, including, of course, the Philadelphia corridor along the border with Egypt.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on DW News with your insights. We've been speaking with Burcu Ozcelik.